Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're joining us from. We're so glad to have you with us. Welcome to part 2 of our webinar series for creating your own $15 an hour fact sheet. We're so excited to have you here, and this session is being recorded, as you note. So if you know of anyone who needs to hear this, should hear this, you think would be interested in hearing this, please do share the recording that we'll make available at the end of this webinar. Closed captioning is also available for this webinar, and if you need that option, please use that. We've made it available. At the end of this webinar, we'll also have a survey that we'll be sending out, and we just ask that you look out for that and please fill it out. If any of you were on the lab introduction with us just a few weeks ago, you'll know that the lab is a new resource and that it's really meant and designed for users. And so we need to hear from you about your feedback and what would be most useful for you. So please take a few minutes at the end of this webinar to take the survey that we'll share with you via that link. So as I mentioned, this is part 2 of our webinar series. My name is Alina. I am with the National Equity Atlas, and I lead the work of the Racial Equity Data Lab. For this part 2 webinar, we'll be talking about how to customize the design of your data visualization. Part 1, which we had 2 weeks ago, was showing you how to access Tableau, how to get started in Tableau Public, and how to start using the Starter Viz and update the data for your community. If you missed that, we have a recording available on our website and on the lab, and we also have the step-by-step guide that will walk you through the same pieces as that. So today we're going to be in this session really thinking about what it means to be a Tableau designer. How do you customize the design elements of a dashboard to make it look and feel right for your brand, right for your flow, and easy to read for your audience? Part 3 that we're going to be having in 2 weeks, we're going to round out this series and talk about the equity narrative framing. So you don't want to miss that, and you can register for that on the policy link or the lab website as well. But today we're so excited to have with us Chantilly Jaggernauth, who you're going to hear from in just a little bit. She is a vice president for training and data visualization at Lovelytics. She's also a Tableau Zen master, which is a big deal. And she partnered with us in designing both this Starter Viz as well as the rent debt dashboard that you'll see on the lab and the other examples in our gallery. She's also the founder and CEO of Millennials in Data, and you can see other wonderful examples of how she uses Tableau for data visualization on her Tableau public profile page, and I highly recommend you check it out. So we're so excited to have her here with us today to share some of her wisdom and expertise and best practices of how you work in Tableau. A couple quick housekeeping items I'll share. All participants are muted during this webinar. The chat is disabled, but we strongly encourage you to please submit all your questions using the Q&A function found at the bottom of your screen. We have Atlas team members joining us today who will help answer your questions live as we go through this webinar. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to enter your questions at any time, and we'll be sure to go through all of them. Pardon me. The webinar is also being recorded, as I mentioned, and we'll post it on the lab, and you will receive a recording of the webinar via email at the end of it. As I mentioned again, please take that survey for us. It really helps us out to hear your input. So as I mentioned, the progress to date, the point of this webinar series is really that at the end of it, you'll be able to walk away with your own customized $15 an hour fact sheet of who is able to access that critical wage in your community. In step 1, we show you how to access Tableau Public, which is a free resource, and how you get started in this Starter Viz, how you access the automated charts and update the data for your community, your geography. We also provided some guiding questions to you for looking at the updated data visual charts and how would you update the text and headlines around it to really bring out the key points and takeaways that your audience should be noticing from your data charts. Step 2, which is today, is once you have all of that updated, how do you make it look right? How do you make it look cohesive? How do you change the colors? How do you fit some of the formatting that you might need to do? We're also going to cover if you want to bring in your own data set. Perhaps the data charts on the dashboard in the Starter Viz are not quite what you need for your community, but you have additional data for your community that you want to bring in. That's absolutely what we hope you will do. We know that the Atlas data, while we try to have it be as comprehensive as possible, we know that you're also experts in your community, and there are additional data sets that you may have access to that would help shed deeper insights into your community. And we strongly hope and encourage and invite that you bring that expertise and information in. That is the goal of this Starter Viz. It's only a starting point. So we want you to bring your voice, your data, your community into the Viz itself. So let me show you where we might. So for example, if I was starting my Starter Viz, I've created here a new example of where, following the same steps that we covered in part 1 of the webinar series, I updated the data for Albuquerque, New Mexico. But you can see that perhaps some things don't quite fit anymore in this new formatting, given the edits that I've made. So what I'll need to do is to go into my Starter Viz, and please feel free to follow along if you would like to do so as we go through this for your own Starter Viz that you've been working on. There we go. And so if you've been working in Tableau Public, you'll recognize this as your workspace view once you click on Edit. And you'll notice a few things that perhaps don't quite fit right that make this hard to read. For example, I've updated a title. It doesn't show up anymore. It's getting cut off. I've updated some of the context for Albuquerque here, but it's also getting cut off here. It's not showing up my full. You can see how there's a fuller sentence that's not showing up in the data dashboard. Perhaps you're from a different organization and you want to put in your own logo, or you want to put in a different box here. National Equity Atlas isn't relevant for you anymore. I've updated the headlines according to the data that I observed using the guided questions. And I can see that these look okay when I look at overall trends. However, I'm noticing here, you can see that for Asian or Pacific Islander, I'm not able to see the full title of that anymore. It also looks as if the pink here under immigrant, for immigrant workers, matches the same color as Native American, which might confuse my users into thinking that this is the same population, but it's not. So I should probably update one of those colors to make it clear that this is not the same data set, even though, and these colors should not match. What else do I see when I look at Albuquerque? Previously, in the example that we had, you could see that if for Dallas, we had disaggregated data for ancestry for our Asian or Pacific Islander population. That data is not available at the same level for Albuquerque, given the smaller population. And so this data point becomes irrelevant and repetitive for what's above. In fact, this entire headline and this chart no longer are relevant for Albuquerque. But perhaps what I do know about Albuquerque is that there is a significant Native American population. And I'd like to showcase a little bit more of that data rather than showcasing the Asian or Pacific Islander data here. When I look at race and gender, I can see some interesting disparities. You can see that Native American and Latino workers are amongst the least likely to be earning $15 an hour, but there are some missing bars that make this chart just look a little bit odd. When I scroll down to educational attainment, the same thing shows up. There are missing bars that make this overall view of my dashboard look incomplete. What I'm also noticing here is that, as I mentioned, there's a significant Native American population in Albuquerque. They're not showing up at all in this chart. And I think that they should be. I know that the data exists. And so some of these other text boxes, which I've updated, include additional context for Albuquerque. I've taken a stab at the headlines. And we're going to go over more detail in part 3 of the webinar series about tying all of these headlines together. But perhaps for now, what I want to concentrate on is really making sure that the data charts and visuals fit, that they look right, that they themselves, the data charts themselves, are telling a coherent story. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chantilly, who's going to walk us through how you do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so here are a list of the edits that Selena went over that we want to go ahead and make to the Tableau visualization. So here I've pulled up the visualization, and the first thing I'm going to do is just copy it from Selena's site and upload it and make sure that it's on my Tableau site. And now we're in the edit screen. So if I go back to my list, the first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and remove the logo. And then we want to replace this logo with our own. So to remove an image, you simply select it on the dashboard and you'll see an X appear. Go ahead and press X. And now we have the title to expand this entire area, but we then want to add in our own logo up top. So if you've deleted an image and you want to add in a new image, on the left-hand side within your dashboard pane, you're going to see under Objects, you'll see an image box. Now, there are two ways that you can bring things onto a Tableau dashboard. You can bring them in as tiled, meaning that you're going to snap it into a certain place, or you can bring it in as floating, meaning that you can drag and drop it wherever you like. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this as tiled, and I will bring in an image. And what you'll see is that I have this gray box appear, and Tableau is asking me, where do I want to drop this image? Now, I want to drop the image right here next to the title. And you see I have to play around with it a little bit. And once I see that gray box appear where I need to drop the image, that's where I'm going to place it. Now you'll have an image box appear that says locate this image. So I'm going to go ahead and locate the image that is on my desktop. So let me find the Lovelytics logo here. I want to fit the image and center the image and press OK. And now I have my Lovelytics logo added. To resize the logo, the image, all I'm doing is selecting one of the boxes. And you want to look for the left side of the image box. You want to look for that double-headed arrow. And when you see it, you'll click and you will drag it and position it to the right. With me positioning that logo to the right, you'll see now that the title is taking up this space. Personally, I think the title is just a little too large for this space, so I want to decrease the size of this title. To decrease the size of the title, I'm simply going to double click on the text box and we will see an edit text box window appear. I'll highlight all of the text and then select size 20, press apply. The difference between apply and OK is that as you're adjusting in this box, pressing apply will show you what it looks like on the dashboard. Pressing OK is going to go ahead and close it out. So now that I'm comfortable with this change, I'll go ahead and press OK. Next, I want to go ahead and do that to this text box that we see here. So the text is cutting off. There's a lot of text that's in this box. So to adjust the size of this, we'll go ahead and double click on it again. And now you'll see all of the text in here. Highlight all of it. And let's take it to a size 10, press apply and see if it fits. And we're good to go. All of the text now fits. So we'll go back to the document. So we've removed the logo, we've added in a new logo, we've updated our title size, and we've updated our first text box. So now we want to start to adjust the headers and start to adjust some of the visualizations so that they can fit a little bit better with the data that we do have. So the first one that we want to adjust is if I scroll down, you'll see here that the Asian or Pacific Islander label is cut off. So what you can do is you can hover between the header and the visualization. And when you do that, you're going to see a horizontal double-headed arrow. You can click and drag that to the right, and that's going to move the axis further to the right and allow your header to expand. So click and drag it to the left and drag it to the right. And now we have all of our information on one line. So we're good with this one. Next, as Alina mentioned, we want to adjust the design of the immigrant donut. Now that we've added back Native American into this visualization, the colors here should not match, because essentially when you think about colors and you have the same colors on the dashboard, your end users are going to try to form somewhat of a correlation between those two colors, right? And in this particular visualizations, the colors do not have a correlation, right? They're totally separate visualizations. So we want to make sure that we have different colors for these vizzes. To adjust the color for this visualization, I'm actually going to expand the worksheet. So to go to the worksheet, you click on it, and then you'll see a go to sheet icon in the top right corner. Select that, and you're going to go to the actual worksheet where you're able to adjust the colors. Now, this is what we call a worksheet. A worksheet is where you can edit one particular view, whereas where we were designing and editing the other things just now, that's called a dashboard, and a dashboard consists of multiple worksheets. We want to edit the color of this particular donut. So we will select on our marks card, we will select the pie marks card, which is going to allow us to adjust the color of the pie chart that you see here. Select color, and then select edit colors. And when you do that, Tableau is going to bring up a color window that allows you to adjust the color. On the right side, if you select the dropdown, you're going to see a list of all of the built-in color palettes that Tableau has available to you. All right, so we can click on Tableau 10, we can select Tableau 20, and to adjust any of these colors, we simply click on the color first and then adjust the color. Or if you want to bring in your own color, you simply double click on the color, and now you're able to bring in your own custom color. So for the purpose of this, I'm actually just going to go ahead and pick my color from the Jewel Bright color palette that's featured here. Press X, and now we see that the color has changed. To go back to the dashboard, if you look down below, you're going to see a list of all of the tabs. If it has a grid next to it, that means that that is a dashboard. So we'll select that, go back to our dashboard, and now it's automatically updated. And now that I look at it, the all color is kind of this purple as well. So let's go ahead and adjust that one more time. Pie chart, color, edit color, and let's see a color that wasn't there. And we could go with this lighter blue. All righty. Perfect. So now we'll scroll down and we'll start to edit some of our other charts. Next, we want to make sure that we are adjusting the filters on the race and the gender chart. So as you can see here, there are certain races and genders that just do not have any data. So we want to adjust the filters that are associated with this chart and exclude those data points. So remember, to go to a worksheet, you simply click on the worksheet, you select go to worksheet, and it's going to now open up the worksheet. What you'll see here is on the left-hand side, your marks card allows you to edit colors and the visual aspect of the charts, and then your filters allow you to include or exclude data. We already have a race and ethnicity filter here, which is the field that is being represented here. How do I know? I can simply look at rows and I see that there's a gender field, which represents the genders here. I'll look at race ethnicity and I see that represents the race ethnicities here. And then I see that there's already a filter here. So to now adjust the filter and to exclude Black and mixed other from this visualization, I'll simply select the drop down, the little caret that you see there. I'm just clicking on that, and then I'll say edit filter. And when I do that, I now have a window appears that allows me to edit the filters. So here I'm going to select the individual race/ethnicities that I like to exclude. I want to exclude the Black one, as well as the mixed/other. And when I'm doing that, you'll see a line now go through them. And that's because I have this exclude filter option checked. If I didn't have it checked, then that would mean by clicking on these, those are the only ones that I'm deciding to include. So just be mindful of what's selected for your exclude as well as your include. You can press apply again and see how those changes appear. And if you're good to go with them, you can press OK. And we'll go back to our dashboard. We've taken care of that. And now let's go ahead and adjust the educational attainment chart. So down below, we want to bring back in the Native American group, and we want to exclude some of these other groups that do not have data. So as I mentioned before, to go to a worksheet, you simply select it and you click on Go to Sheet. And the same thing will apply with the filters. As you can see here, we have race ethnicity being displayed, and we want to edit which ones are included and which ones are excluded. So within our filters panel on the left, we will select the drop-down caret again and say Edit Filters. And here, I'm actually going to go ahead and deselect the Asian group as well as the mixed other. And we want to bring back in the Native American population and press apply. We also want to exclude the Black population from this. So we're going to bring back Native American, remove Black, mixed other, Asian or Pacific Islander, and we've gone and we've done that here. Press apply, everything checks out, and now we can press OK. And that leads us back to our dashboard. With us adjusting the filters that you saw here, the legend automatically updates as well. So that's something unique about Tableau, is that it's able to see what's in your view and only display the data points on your legend based off of what is in your view. Next, we want to swap out this chart. So to swap out this chart, we actually want to bring in our own data set. So here I have a data set that is on my computer that has the data that we want to now represent in this new chart within our visualization. So the first thing I want to do is I need to select data up top and add in a new data source, because this is a data source that's local to my computer. So go ahead and we say add new data source, and you'll see a connect to data window appear. The file that we want to connect to is on my computer. So I will say upload from computer, and here is the data set. Now, once we've done that, if we click data again, we'll see that we have another data set. So we have two data sets in total. To create a new worksheet in Tableau, you want to select the new worksheet icon. Typically, if a data set, or if you're trying to create a visualization that has a different data set from all of your other charts, you want to make sure that you're starting with the new worksheet and not trying to just replace the visualizations or trying to replace the viz that you see here. So as you can see, I'm not going to this worksheet and taking everything off. I'm actually just going to go ahead and create a new worksheet, because what you'll see is that as you're bringing various data points onto your canvas, Tableau identifies the data source that those fields are coming from. And because there's no relationship right now built in between these two data sets, we don't want Tableau to ask us like, what's the relationship, and continue to give us an error saying that there is no relationship. So that's why I'm going the route of just creating a brand new worksheet, and then we're going to replace it with the one that is currently on the dashboard. The next thing that we want to do with this new worksheet is we want to make sure that we are on the data source that contains our new data. So on the left-hand side within our data pane, you want to go ahead and select the data source that contains the data. And here it is. Now, here are all of the fields that we went ahead and we brought in from our data set that is here. But one thing I want to call out is that we have two data points that should be numbers, but as you can see, Here, Tableau actually brought those data points in as string fields. So to change the type of field that these two data points are, just to make sure that Tableau recognizes that they are numerical values and not text values, we want to select more options. And we want to change the data type. So both of these should be number decimals. And as you can see, when I do that, this ABC is now replaced with a numerical sign or a hashtag. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to change this to a measure. So you can think of a dimension and a measure in Tableau as quantitative and qualitative data. So dimensions are going to be your qualitative data points, and they are the things that are classified as blue. And then your quantitative measures are your numerical values, and those are called measures in Tableau. So we want to make sure that these two fields, they're not classified as dimensions, but instead as measures. So we'll click the more options drop down again and say convert to measure, and you will now see that it appears down below. The key difference is that when something is classified as a measure, Tableau is going to allow you to take the sum of it, the average of it, the min, the max, things like that, versus if it were a dimension, you wouldn't really be able to aggregate that data point. So that's the purpose of making sure that you change anything numerical that you want to aggregate over to a measure. So now let's go ahead and create our chart. The data point that we're going to use for our headers, for our rows, is going to be the race and ancestry field that we see here. So let's go ahead and locate that field and drag it to rows. Here's the field, we'll take it to rows. Next, we want to make sure that we are filtering this particular visualization to have immigration of all, right? Because the data is repeated here. So we just want to make sure that we're only looking at the all immigration population. So we will take that field, drag it to filters, and select all. The top all means both of these will be selected. So this is Tableau's all. The all that you see here is the all that's coming from the data set. And press OK. And now a numerical value that we want to represent here is this field, column I. So we will locate this measure that we've now converted, and we will drag it to columns. And now we will have our visualization. To display the label at the end of our bars, you can select the show mark labels in your toolbar, and that's going to display the label. And these are actually percentages, but they came in as decimal places. So to adjust the number format, I'm going to select the drop down in columns for this field that I want to change the format of and select format number. And now we're able to change it to a percentage, and we will have 0 decimal places. Next, I don't think that we need this header here. So to get rid of this header that you see here, this field label, I will select this, and let's see if I can do it. Actually, I can't do it in this view, so we'll actually just leave it there. Next, from there, I want to go ahead and change the color of the bars. To change the color of the bars, I will simply select color on the marks card. And when I do this, I have the color palette where I'm able to adjust it to whatever color I wish. If I wanted to color each of these bars differently, I will take the field that I want to color by and drag it instead to color on the marks card. So the difference is that by clicking color here, I can uniquely change the color to whichever one I want. Versus if I were to take this field, race, and drag that to color, I'll now have a different color for each of them. So to edit the color when you have a view like this, you'll click color on your marks card and then say edit colors, and now you're able to adjust the color. Now I can actually change the color code for each of these individually, and I already have that color code available. Here it is. So I'll double click on the squares next to each of the names and assign the color. And the reason that I'm doing this instead of going the route of the singular color is because in Tableau Public, I had to have a field that allows me to add a custom color. It wasn't going to allow me to add a custom color just by clicking color on there. And the last thing that we want to do, let's see if it's available here, is we want to hide this axis. So when you're displaying a label, you don't necessarily need to display an axis because an axis is there pretty much to allow your end user to kind of guesstimate where the end of the bar is. But if you have a label there, you don't really need to do that. So to hide this axis that you see here, you can click on the field that the axis represents, select more options, and deselect show header. Next, we want to go ahead and bring this worksheet into our visualization. So we'll go back to our dashboard. Scroll down, and on the left-hand side, you will see that we now have a new sheet. It's called Sheet 8. But we can go ahead and change the name of this simply by right-clicking on the field on the tab down below and renaming it. And we can call this one Native American Ancestry and press OK. And now we want to bring in the Native American Ancestry worksheet in the place of this. Instead of closing this out, I'm going to just go ahead and take this new worksheet that we've created and drag it in the same place. So that's one option or one way of doing it. I'm going to press undo here. Another way of swapping out the sheet is by selecting more options. Let's see if it's available here. Let's go ahead and just show you what it looks like if we were to just completely remove it. So now we can take this worksheet and drop it here and just resize it like that. When I brought in this worksheet, a legend came in with it. So to remove the legend, I'm simply just going to select X, and it's going to remove it from the dashboard. A couple of other things that we can do now that this is on our dashboard. If you wanted to make this a column chart instead of a horizontal chart because you thought you had a lot of horizontal charts here, you could simply select the swap icon in your toolbar, and that's going to allow you to adjust the chart. If you wanted to take up all of the space that's available here, you can select more options here, and under fit, you can change that to entire view, and that's now going to take up all of the space here. I'm actually going to swap this back and leave it as the chart that you see here. The last thing I want to do is I want to edit the title here so that it can have a cohesive title like the rest of these. The title that I have is already written out for me. So I'll go ahead and I'll grab that title, Control C. To edit the title, I'll simply select more options under the title, say edit title, delete the text there, paste in my text, and just format. So I want the text that's written here to match the text that's written for all of these other charts. So I'll press OK, and I'll go and look at all of these other charts and edit a title for one of them to see how the text is displayed. So as you can see, it's Tableau Light, size 11, with a black color. And it's also bold. So we want to now apply those same changes here. Edit title, select all of it. Tableau Light, size 11, bold, same color. To decrease the size of the bars, if the bars are a little too wide for you, on your worksheet, you can select size, and you can drag the slider to the left. So now we've taken care of all of our changes. We've added in our new chart. We've adjusted the color here for our donut chart. We've adjusted the label here, which is the same thing that we can also do here if we wanted to wrap on the next line. We went ahead and adjusted some of the filters for this, adjusted the filters here, and now we're ready to save it to our portfolio. So to save it, we'll simply select File, Save As, and now I can save this as a new workbook on my Lovelytics portfolio. So we can call this press save. What's my error? Must use extracts. Got it. Alrighty, so Tableau is telling me that this data source right here needs to be extracted, which it already is. So if we click on it and I say edit the data, so if I go back to just show you all what I did, data, hovered over it, and I said edit data source. Tableau is basically telling me that I need to package this data so that it can be a file on its server so that it can read it once I save it to mine. So to do that, we have to create an extract in Tableau. So I need to extract this data because the other data set is already an extract. So my other data source that you see here is already included as an extract. So I want to go ahead and say extract data, create an extract. It's going to import that data, package it with my file so that I can now save this to my own Tableau public site. Alrighty, so my extract is created. I can now go back to my dashboard, select File, Save As. Save. And we should not receive an error this time. There we have it. So when I press X, closed out the visualization, look at my site, my Tableau public site, I will now see that viz here. I have it hidden because all of the new vizzes that I publish on here are automatically hidden unless I decide to unhide them. So to hide and unhide a viz, I can simply just select the visibility icon there. So now it's public, now it's not. Awesome, that's all I have for you all. And I'll turn it back over to the team.
And Chantilly, before you stop sharing your screen, we had a question come in that I think would be great if you could discuss is, can you resize by inputting pixel size for an image so that it's more precise instead of dragging and dropping?
You can only put in the height and the width or the pixel size on Tableau for floating objects. So you're not able to do that for a tiled object. So here, I'm not able to adjust it. The only way that I can adjust this image is dragging left and right. The only way that I could get to like a pixel perfect size is by making it floating and then selecting layout. And that's where I'm able to edit the X, the Y, and the width and the height. That's it.
Yeah, and I'll note that once you did that, it stopped interacting with the other boxes that were on the dashboard.
Exactly. So floating just means that you can drag and drop it anywhere that you like.
Thank you.
Any other questions with Tableau being open?
I don't see any right now, so let's give people a moment to think about their questions, and I'll close out with just a quick few closing slides.
Alrighty, turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And so, this one. Sorry about this, folks. All right. Okay, so just a few quick next steps to remind people. We have a webinar series, part 3, the final in this series coming up, in which we'll walk you through tying it all together, right? That will say, how do we bring a cohesive message together if the goal of this is really to create a fact sheet that you can use in your campaigns, that you can put in front of an audience just for them to read and understand on their own. You want it to be a tight narrative that focuses on equity, that helps explain to them what they should take away from the data visuals and what actions that they should take. What are the equity solutions that they should take action on next? And so in part 3, that's what we're going to talk about. And I invite you in between now and then to go back through this webinar recording, make sure you have the steps right that Chantilly walked us all through, customize the data visualizations as you want them to look, and reflect on some of these questions about why does this data matter? Why does this topic matter for your community? Who is your audience? What is the key equity narrative for your community? Are there any other voices you want to bring in? So in some of the steps that Chantilly showed with this data is that we excluded some just by hiding empty bars. And that's because for the National Equity Atlas data, we don't always have enough data for that population to report with confidence, which means that there's a small sample size. And in those cases, what we always do in our methodology is to note this in the notes section at the bottom of each of our visualizations. This is something that we do as part of our approach for having an equity lens to our work. And just one of the things that we'll share with you also as we discuss in part 3, why it's important to be clear in the data that you're displaying and how you're displaying it, right? Because what we don't want someone to walk away with is this idea that we've deliberately excluded a population. I'll also note that with the text boxes, we know that our data is not always going to be a complete picture. It's only part of the picture. And that's really where your voice, your own data sets, both qualitative and quantitative, the stories and insights from your community are also important. And that's what we hope that you will also bring in. And you'll see that those text boxes, we've included our suggestions based on the equity narrative we were sharing in our Dallas example. But those text boxes could easily be edited for you to bring in additional quotes, profiles, information, stories from your community that helps bring in more of that qualitative data that's also important for rounding out your narrative. So think about all those things, bring all of that information into your Viz, and we'll talk through more of that on part 3 of the webinar series on June 17th, in just 2 weeks, same time. So remember to register. We have a link available on our website, and you'll also get a link after this webinar. And that's just a reminder of when it is. So if you have any other questions, if you want to view the Viz, if you want to view resources that we've created, examples, as I shared, of Chantilly's work with us, please visit the lab, look at the resources, and contact me at selena@policylink.org at any time. I would love to hear from you. We would love in the survey as well that we're going to send out to hear your feedback about this webinar and the lab generally, but please feel free to email me as well. And with that, I will And we can go into if there are any more Q&A. Sure, I'm happy to repeat my email. It is selena@policyleague.org, and I'm also going to type it in here. I hope to hear from you. All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions coming in. So if they come to you after, please know my email, as I shared, is here. It's also available on the lab website, so feel free to reach out anytime. And we will make the recording of this webinar available. You'll receive it in an email after this. We're happy to end it here. Please do take the time to fill out the survey. It's very short, but it just gives us some feedback to understand if this webinar was helpful for you, what other resources will be helpful for you, and just helps us learn so that we can make the resources on the lab as helpful as possible. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you on June 17th. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to Chantilly for joining us today, too.
Thank you for having me.